And now you should get it. Oh, that was quick on the recording. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury, and I'm going to be hosting Archery Talk 101. And we have Scott on the line with us. We're going to talk to him and see what's going on in his world of archery. Scott, how about if you introduce yourself and tell us a little something about you?
Yes, sir. Once again, thank you for the invitation. My name is Scott Owens. I live in central Alabama. So the deer hunting down here can be rather difficult. And I guess I grew up like everybody else, at least in my area. Grew up hunting squirrel, rabbit, deer. And like most other people, by the time I hit a certain age, I kind of got out of the hunting, kind of gave it up. And in 2010, I decided to get back into deer hunting and learned very quickly that I knew little to nothing about deer hunting and had to really just start all the way back over from the very beginning to learn everything I could about deer hunting. And specifically in the state of Alabama, um, we have, I believe it's 5 different ruts because of the repopulation or the program that they instituted to grow the herd in the state of Alabama. So they brought deer in from different areas, different parts of the country. And so we have 5 different ruts, and you could literally hunt the rut starting, I know, in November and hunt all the way through February, which is when our deer season ends, and hunt the rut every month. And so it was a lot of growing and learning. Um, I never bow hunted. I didn't bow hunt, didn't care for it. I'd always believed the myths that, if you bow hunt, you're more likely to lose a deer. You've got to trail the deer further. It's just not ethical. It's all these different things that you hear about bow hunting. And in 2014, I used to get on the treadmill and I would watch different little TV shows and things. And what really got me into bow hunting was I was watching a hunting show called Heartland Bow Hunter. And watching that show lit a fire under me because I'm the kind of person to where if I see somebody doing something, I truly believe that if they can do it, I can do it. And so um, I went and bought my first bow August 13th, 2015. And I started just slinging arrows, basically. I would shoot 100 arrows a day minimum. Um, so when October 15th rolled around, I took my bow, went into the woods, and started hunting. I killed my first deer that season. Unfortunately, it was a doe. It was a doe that just kept busting me. She kept blowing and busting me. Every time I turn around, she'd bust me. So finally, it became a bitch. It was more of a revenge kill than anything else that I shot and killed her. Uh, I'd had all I could take. She busted me about 4 or 5 times. And eventually, I just like, you know what? She's got to go. And I got her. And then by mid-November or toward the end of November, I went from I had a PSC Stinger X ready to hunt that I bought at one of the big box stores. And I decided I wanted to step up and get a real compound bow. So I bought a PSC Decree IC the week of Thanksgiving that same year. And I killed a 120-inch buck during the rut uh, December 27th that morning with that bow. I killed one more smaller buck that season, and that was the first season hunting because I hunt my own property. It's about 17 acres. It's very small. Um, with the way I work, it's kind of difficult to get out and travel to the public land and try to hunt. I really wouldn't have the time for that. And so it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of patience, but I love it. Since then, I've maybe 3 or 4 times taken a rifle deer hunting since 2015. It's been pretty much bow, strictly just bow only. And then a couple of years ago, I came across Levi Morgan and Bow Life. And I watched that, and that kind of piqued my interest in the 3D archery world. So 3 years ago, I started shooting competitively in 3D archery. and fell in love with that, and just I love it, enjoy it. It's one of the few hobbies that I have that I can actually take the time to practice and participate in. So it's just been since I'd say since 2015, it's just been archery, archery, archery. Whether it's hunting or 3D now. Um, I lost my lease. Unfortunately, I was for a while. I was leasing the property that was directly behind my house that butted up against my property, and opened up a whole new world. I was leasing like 150 acres, so it was just I could come home from work, change clothes, and be in the tree stand within 20 minutes. But unfortunately, I lost that a couple years ago, and so it's been back to the 17 acres that I have, and uh, deer season is not looking all that great again this year. Uh, so I've been really dedicating a lot of my time to the 3D archery world. In fact, this morning I got up, went out, even though ASA 3D season is over with. I got up, went out, and was shooting my bow. Unfortunately, I had a bout of target panic that came about middle of the 3D season, and so I've been trying to work to get through that and get that out of the way. So it was especially now with bow season coming up in less than a month and a half. So
Yeah.
it's been eventful to say the least.
Now, are you using a wrist strap or a handheld release?
Actually, I use a well. Let me. I went to a hinge release. I started hunting with a hinge release back in, I guess it was about 2018. I had an injury to my right elbow. I had a bone spur, golfer's elbow, and tennis elbow, all three at the same time. And at that time, I was using the old index finger,
Right.
and it was so painful that I would go to full draw, and it was on my release hand that the release elbow, that elbow that I got it, and so I would go to full draw, and it would just be so painful. My elbow was swollen up, and I would go to full draw, and it's just the pain was just. And I'm kind of hard headed, and instead of going to the doctor and doing anything about it, other than yeah, this is what's wrong with you, do this. I didn't do what I was supposed to, and I'm going to hunt because it was only 2 weeks into the deer season that it popped up, and so I continued to hunt with it, and it by the end of the season, I had target panic. As soon as my pins were on, as soon as there was fur behind my pins, I was punching the trigger. And so after deer season that year, I swapped to a thumb button to try to get over the target panic that had been instilled in me by my actions. And I got through the target panic that year. Got back to shooting really good groups, shooting really good distances, and everything. And about a year later, once again, I this time I dislocated the vertebrae, my C7 vertebrae in my neck, and pinched a nerve. And so once again, the pain from going to full draw, holding the bow at full draw, um, target panic once again, and it was a rough season. Spine shot several deer. Unfortunately, had to shoot them again to kill them. And once I never really got over the pain, did never really go away. I just learned to deal with it, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And that point though, I was like, I've got to do something because of course there was no going back to a index, to the index release, and the thumb button. I was just punching it once again. As soon as there was brown fur behind my pins, I was just punching away. So I swapped to a hinge, and I actually started hunting with a hinge. And so I hunted with a hinge release, and that was 2020. So I've been hunting with a hinge release for 5 years, and unfortunately, um, self-induced target panic hit about middle of the 3D season, and now I'm like, I've got to do something. So I had several people give me some suggestions and some things, and give me some tips, and I worked on it, just could not. By that point, I think it went from being target panic to just being so anxious about the target panic that I was shooting very conservatively, and every shot I was anxious because I'm like, okay, is this going to be a one of those target panic shots where I hit high left, and instead of hitting anywhere near the ten rings, I'm hitting fives or missing the target altogether. So I'm like, I've got to do something. And I've had several people that were like, "Hey, you need to try a tension release." And so about 3 weeks ago, I bought a tension release, and so I've been working with that tension release now for off and on for 3 weeks, and I'm starting to get a good feel for that. So I don't know if I'll hunt with it, but I definitely will be shooting it up until the beginning of bow season.
Now, have you ever tried shooting blind bales where you get up close to target and eyes closed and all you do is concentrating on your proper release?
Yes, sir. In fact, I guess if there was a Olympic sport for blank bailing, I'd be right there with the pros on that because I can blank bail with the best. I can stand at 5 yards and blank bail with the best of them. I even did the thing where you take your sight off and just no sight, no nothing, just shoot. Did all that, close the eyes and shoot, and feel for the perfect form. And it doesn't matter how much I do that. As soon as that pin is incorporated back into my shot, it's over. And it's not necessarily at 5 yards or 10 yards. 20 yards, not too bad. But once I start hitting 30 yards and 40 yards and 50 yards, that pin, I will just start to focus on that pin. I will focus on that pin movement. And I will wind up trying to either force the arrow to or force the shot to go off when the pin basically do a drive by.
Yeah.
Because I'll try to force that shot to go off as soon as that pin goes across the target. Boom. Or I will try to hold the pin on target and force the shot to go off. And neither one of those work very well for me.
Well,
Uh,
when you're focusing on the pin, you're not aiming.
no, sir.
No. So what you have to do is it's sometimes hard to do, but look where you want the arrow to go. Ignore the pins. Just concentrate on the destination of the arrow and let the pins do what they want to do. And try shooting some like that where you don't even pay attention to the pins. You don't care if they're on target or not. Just concentrate where you want it to go and go through your shot. And don't ever worry about where the pins are. Who cares where they're at? You could even take your pins off and just where you're only focusing on where you want it to go. Shoot where you want it to go. And then put your pin back on, your sight back on, and now you're still focusing on the destination of the arrow. And if the pins are on it, fine. If not, just keep shooting until finally you can kind of peripherally see the pins. The pins aren't in focus. The only thing in
Yeah,
focus is the target. And now put them on because if you're watching the pin, it's going to cause target panic. And I've
exactly.
seen it so many times because just like what you was explaining, it's like, okay, you see the pin, and how I describe target panic is you see the pin go over the target, and your mind says shoot. So you pull the trigger, whatever, and then the pin moves on. It says don't shoot. So it's shoot, and then this emergency panic, don't shoot. And that's what causes, all of a sudden that jerking motion because now you're trying to time the pins.
Exactly.
And I've I've had one thing that helps if you have somebody there with you is now you can't do it with a hinge because you got to manipulate it or handheld. If you get ones like these where you have them triggered and on the handheld, I bury them completely all the way up, and I don't know if you can see it too well, but
Oh,
that
yeah.
trigger is sitting where my thumb meets my index finger, right back in there. And now on this one, there's a little spot on the back here. I can actually put pressure on this release. I can put pressure on that as hard as I want, and it won't fire until I pull through. Now, if I make a fist, it will fire. You
Yes.
know, so if I tighten my hand up, but if I pull through, kind of hard to do here. I don't have my. There we go. I think this will fit on here. Um, I have a little piece of strings that I've made that kind of test. So now, as I have pressure on here, it's not going to go off until I pull my hand through. And that's something that works really well for developing that. Now, if I want it to fire, I can just make a fist. I can force it to fire, if I'm in a situation where I can do that. But as I'm pulling through, I'm putting a lot of pressure on here. And as soon as I start pulling with my back muscles, that's when it fires. And that's something that you can try in here. Take well, you're not having too much trouble when you're not firing it, but I have a piece of string I kept in my quiver that was my draw length, and I would put it on my hand, and then I'd hook on my release onto it, and then keep your hand relaxed. And then when it shoots, that string should go straight to your target. If not, your form is off. That's one thing I used to do all the time to, correct my form if something didn't feel right. But that's something you might try is just focus on the spot you want it to hit. Take like a 1 inch circle, an orange circle so you can see it, or a white circle, whatever color you can see, and put on a target and only focus on just that spot. And
Okay.
you can do it without even shooting. Just take, um, draw back, focus on that spot. So you don't even see your pins. It completely ignore your pins. Just focus on that spot and then execute your shot. And then keep doing it until eventually you don't even notice the pins are there. Now then you can start seeing the blurry pin because you can't focus at arm's length on pins and have your target in focus. So
No.
focus on that spot only. So it's nice and clear and let your pins be blurry. And then now try executing your shot that way and see if that don't help.
Yes, sir. That at this point I've been like I said, I start off because I'm self-taught and everything everything's self-taught. I Where I live is the nearest archery shop is 60 plus miles away. And so it's just trying to going to get a coach or anything like that is not really feasible, not with the schedule I work. And so a lot of YouTube videos and this. I did have a good friend of mine that saw a post that I put on Facebook, and he's like, "What are you doing this afternoon?" He's like, "Meet me." And so I drove like an hour and a half, and met up with him, and he gave me some of the tips that you're talking about. Um, he was telling me some things to do as far as like 3D archery that he does to help with target panic, and so I've been incorporating a lot of that. And but what I've found by using that is a what's it called? A knock on silverback. It's a tension release. And what I've discovered that by using that release, it forces me to slow down. And I think that helps in itself because pair that with a lot of what you're talking about as far as like focusing on the target. So for me, it's like just draw, anchor, bring the pin on the target, and then quit looking at the pin. I still catch
Yeah.
myself looking at the pin, but stop looking at the pin and look at what I want to hit. And then by using that tension release, and because you've got this, it's about slowly manipulating that release or pulling through. And because you're slowly pulling through and not trying to, because if you try to jerk, it just doesn't work that way. It just never going to work that way. And that's actually helpful because that was one of the things I do is somebody said that buddy of mine was like, "You're plucking." He's like, when you're shooting the release, I noticed that you're plucking you're literally plucking with that release. You're pulling away from your face. You're pulling back and away at the same time. And because the majority of my target panic misses are high left. And because I'm pulling back and away at the same time, trying to force that to go off because that pin's crossing the spot that I want to hit.
Yeah.
And so using that tension release, it's just slowly pulling back because you're not going to make that release go off any other way. And so I think that helps me a lot as well. And I'm starting to learn what you're talking about as far as focus on the spot that I want to hit. Because the longer I'm sitting there trying to pull through the shot, that pin's going to go where it's going to go. And I have to accept that. And I have to accept that I need to focus on the target itself. So I'm I don't want a quick fix. I think that's what happened in the past. Is I had quick fixes when I had target panic. It was target panic due to pain, and so when the pain was gone, it was easy to get over that target panic. But this target panic was more self-induced. I had a we had a it was a well for me it was a significant tournament. It was a local club, but it had the scores were going to go for our state, which is BHA Bowhunters of Alabama. It's the one that's it's I guess a state club or state operated. It's not just ASA, but it's the BHA. And so the BHA score, you had BHA score, then you have your ASA scores. And this particular tournament was for both BHA and ASA scoring. And at the time, I was leading for shoot of the year in both BHA and ASA in my division. And so I like to call it the monster debacle of Lee County because I had uh, I had recently quit drinking monsters altogether because I was like, I'm 54 years old. I got to stop drinking these things. And I'd gone like 2 weeks without drinking one. And unfortunately, this event was like a 2.5 hour drive. I had to get up extremely early and didn't sleep. I worked nights and was off the night before, prior to the event. And so I didn't really sleep very well that night. And so woke up, I was tired. I'm like, okay, I'll drink one monster on the way down there. I'll drink it. Usually I'll drink a monster in 30 minutes. It's done. I'm like, I'll drink it on the way. Any kind of side effects from it will be over with by the time I get there. Well, this particular morning, I got one of the really large drinks, and I didn't drink it immediately, and I didn't finish it up till about 30 minutes before I got there. And I pulled into the parking lot, got out, was setting my bow up, and as I was connecting my stabilizers to my bow, I was like, "Oh Lord, the jig hit!" And I was like, "Oh no!" I mean, I was shaking. The two gentlemen that I was shooting with, by the three-quarters of the way through the tournament, we were laughing because it was just a nightmare. I would go to range a target and I would get three different ranges from the same target because I was just all over the place. It was horrible. And um, I don't blame the monster. I blame, because archery is mental. It's, to me,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, archery is 99.9% mental. Um, but because I was so jittery, I let that get into my head, and then it was just downhill from there. Because then the target panic. It's like, okay, I'm all over the place. What am I doing? And I mean, it was, and I thought that weekend was bad. And 2 weeks later, we had another tournament, and that was even worse. That one, just the very first target right out the door, it was a 5, and I'm like, oh Lord, I shot that thing so bad, and I'm like, Lord, that was the lowest score I've shot. I've only been doing this for 3 years, and so I'm very competitive, and I'm my worst enemy and my biggest competition. I will. I've always I've always been able to get into if I took up a sport. I've done football, basketball, taekwondo, mountain biking. I've done all of that. I've participated at some level in all of that, and I've always been able to get into something. And because I'm willing to put forth the effort, to train, doesn't matter if I have to get up an hour, 2 hours early, or stay up an hour, 2 hours later than normal. If that's what it's going to take for me to excel at that particular sport, then that's what I'm going to do. And all those other sports that I participated in were physical. And not to say that there's not any mental aspect into it, but it's mostly physical. And I've always been able to push through any pain or anything like that, and just do what's got to be done to excel. And archery is not like that. Archery, it's between the ears. I mean, it's all in the mind. And once your mind gets sideways with it, you've got to try to get it back straightened up. And that's what happened. I went to that next event, and I was already from the very first target. I mean, we were on the practice range, and I was already like, oh, this is not going to go good at all. Like, this is going to be bad. And it was. I mean, and by doing that, by telling myself that, I just kind of set myself up for failure in there. And so after that, um, it went downhill from there. But because I had been shooting rather well to start the season off, I still finished up. I lost the BHA Central Zone Shooter of the Year by 1 point, and I finished second. It was my first time going to state championship, and I finished second in the ASA state championship, and I lost the ASA Shooter of the Year by 3 points. So I'm not much for second place, but I will call it a win. I'll consider it a win, considering everything else that I had gone through, and the fact that I've come to discover that the majority of the gentlemen that I'm shooting against or shooting with, these guys have been shooting 3D tournaments longer than I've been shooting a bow. Um, I've been shooting a bow for 10 years now this year, and these guys have been shooting 3D tournaments for 20 plus years. So I guess I have to give myself a little bit of a break on that, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Because there you kind of caused your own problems.
Oh, exactly, exactly. I have no one
Yeah,
to blame but myself.
yeah, like I said, archery is one of those you don't have to have a lot of physical ability because the basics are the basics. Learn the basics. You don't have to have anything fancy. You can go get a pawn shop bow and win
Exactly,
tournaments with it. You know,
exactly,
the only advantage of buying the more expensive ones is there's additional features. They're a little smoother. There's other advantages to buying, a little bit more expensive rest or the sight. There's a lot more features. There's three axes you can adjust on a sight. You have your left and right and up and down, but then also as you tilt your bow down or up, does that sight stay level? So
exactly,
is it twisted in that third axis? You got your north, south, east, west, but you also have the angle, the tilt. And your more expensive bow or sights will have that adjustment to adjust that. And you have to put it in a special jig so that you hold it level and plumb. And then you tilt it down and see what your level does on your sight. And then you might have to tweak it. And those who don't have them, I've even put little spacers in because it needed to be moved over just a little bit and find the right thickness of spacer. And you can do it that way. But the ones that are set up to do that, there's a little adjustment on them and it makes it really easy. That's what you're getting by buying in more expensive sites. And in your rests, you can get by with the cheap whisker biscuit. You're not going to be as accurate with it because you have 100% contact with your fletching.
exactly.
You can
Yes, sir.
also get the ones that just have two little prongs that hold the arrow. That's what I hunt with. And, those are set up. You get them set right and no problem with them. And then you have your dropaways. The advantage of those is you have no contact with your arrow at all. The disadvantage is if it's not set up right, you're going to get terrible flight. There's nothing to correct that arrow once it gets launched. If you're not perfectly center shot and perfectly, set to be a right angle to your string, if it's not in the center, the center of the force of the string, it's not going to ever fly right because there's nothing to straighten it out. So there's a lot of things that's, for hunting, you're only shooting 20 yards normally, so biscuit is nice because your arrow can't fall off. You don't have to worry about the arrow falling off as you're moving around and stuff like that. So, if you catch a branch a little bit, it just pops right back in the center.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I don't hunt with a biscuit because I like to be more accurate than what those allow me, and that's also why I shoot your Comp Pros, your 1,000 straightness arrows.
oh
I
yeah,
don't use the normal hunting ones that are 3 or 6 thousandths because you can't group as tight, especially when you put a broadhead on there and try and shoot them. But
oh it's definitely been a learning curve. Like I said, because of the fact that the closest archery shop to me is, like I said, 60, well, it's about 65 miles from my house. And so years ago, I had to learn to, I'm like, okay, I can't just drop everything, especially my work schedule. I can't just drop everything and run to the bow shop and drop it off. And then, you know, generally it's not going to be sitting there waiting for them to do it. You're going to have to come back a week later and then pick it up. And so I determined that I'm going to have to start doing a lot of this stuff myself. And so I just really dove into it, started consuming as much information as possible, whether it was a podcast or a YouTube video or just reading what I could find online to start learning how to work on my bow for myself. And so now, of course, warranty work, you got to take it to a shop, but I would say 95 to 98% of the work that's done on my bow is by me. I do all my, tune it, whatever type of tuning I'm doing, whether it's walk back or paper tuning or bear shaft tuning, group tuning, broadhead tuning. It's all me. Plus, I feel that if it's kind of like if you take a bow to someone else and have them tune it for you, unless you're there shooting every arrow that's shot to that bow is not tuned to you. And
correct.
and everybody's different. And that's one of the things about archery is it doesn't matter who you are, everybody is different, from your grip to your anchor to your draw cycle to your form to your stand. I mean, everything. No two people are going to be identical, and so what works for one person may not work for you. You can learn from somebody else. No, I'm not saying you can't do that. You can watch people, talk to somebody, and take bits and pieces of their information. Take their information and then go try it and find what works for you. And you may end up taking information from three or four different people and combining various aspects of all four to get what works the best for you, to get the best arrow flight, the best shot, whatever. And I think that's another aspect of archery that just so easily to fall in love with is the, I guess, for lack of a better term, the tinkering, because you can always be doing something to try to make that bow or make yourself shoot better, and not just for 3D archery, but for bow hunting. And I mean, personally, to me, shooting a live animal is easier than shooting at 3D target. Um, I know the size of that heart that's inside that deer. I know where I want to put that arrow, and it's just a matter of waiting for the precise moment. And I know that I've got a target about the size of my fist. If I want to hit it in the top of the heart, I know what about where I need to put the arrow. But for 3D archery, when you're trying to hit that little bitty 12 ring at 50 yards, 40 yards, it's a little bit more difficult. It doesn't matter that that's not a live animal. I'm not worried about it running off. I'm not worried about it moving in any form or fashion, but just that little bitty 12 ring, it just presents a bigger challenge to me than trying to shoot a deer that's, yes, the deer may run off. Yes, that deer may flinch. And that's where patience pays off right there, because you waiting for the perfect shot. You're waiting for that perfect moment to take that shot. And to me, of course, I think that's what makes bow hunting so much more enjoyable to me over rifle hunting now.
Yeah. Well, and on your 3D targets on a deer, where you shoot on the target is not where you're going to shoot on the live animal anyway.
No, it's not.
Because if you're shooting like down at a target, uh, that that 12 ring is in the same spot. Well,
Hmm.
if you shoot the live animal at that same spot, you're going to have nothing but just fat on your arrow. You've got to
Exactly.
shoot a different. You got to shoot where, maybe you got to shoot above or even the 8 ring,
Exactly.
because of the angle you're at. So shooting at the live animal is different than shooting at a target. You're different. What I like about the 3Ds is you learn how to judge yardage, because the yardage is the same whether it's a live animal or a target. The distance where you're at and the angles and all that kind of stuff. That helps you develop that. I've got, as far as working on your own equipment, if you go out to my YouTube channel, learn to fix it yourself. I have some videos on how to set up different things and how to make strings and do reduce center servings and stuff like that, as far as and in working on your bow. And one of the things that you can do in the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group is take a video of your shooting, upload it to the group
Okay,
and say,
I'll
hey,
definitely do
I'm
that.
having this problem. Let's take a look at it. What am I, give me some suggestions. What do you think I need to fix? And um, my first online student lived in Italy, and the
Yeah,
same
I heard
situation
it.
you are.
Podcast. I heard the one of your earlier podcasts. I heard you talk about that.
Yeah. And then I had another guy in Canada, 45 minutes on a Zoom call with him, and he's going from, probably 3, 4 inch groups to 3 arrows touching. And that's kind of stuff with, somebody that's been teaching. I've been an arch instructor since 95. So I've taught hundreds of people how to shoot.
I can
I
imagine.
You probably heard on one of the podcasts. I taught this guy his very first bow. He got a high-end bow because he didn't want to buy two bows. And 2 weeks later, after his very first bow, in 2 weeks he got his first Robin Hood.
Wow,
you, you know, uh,
that's
can you guarantee getting a Robin Hood? No. I've gotten probably 6 or 8 of them, something like that. Um, I got 2 of them when I was working at Cabela's in the archery department. I got 2 of them there. One was with a bow that they ended up recalling because there was a problem with it. It's like, well, We set it up. I shot two arrows, got a Robin Hood, and then three other guys. We set up all different draw lengths and hit just fine. And then I had a no, and I set up a drop away rest, and you have to shoot them to see if they're going to work. I shot two arrows, stuck two together. So can I do that on demand? Oh no. Oh no, I'm not going to say I can get a Robin Hood any time I want because I've shot many arrows and smacked arrows and hit knocks and everything else before I got my first Robin Hood with aluminum arrows before there was carbons.
Oh yeah.
And those that's kind of interesting how they when you finally do get them. And I use a bullet point, and they were double X 78s, which had an insert, and I busted knocks and bent the inserts for the knock until you finally get one dead perfect. And I didn't use the combo points to come to a real sharp point. I used the bullet points, which is real fat. So if you're not dead on perfect, it's not going to go down the shaft. And
Oh yeah.
first time I got him was like, it's kind of weird. It's just kind of like a square wave is what the side of it looked like. It's kind of interesting.
I've actually still have my very first Robin Hood. I shot it of all bows. I shot it with that PSC Decree. That's a speed bow.
Yeah,
Uh, I think it was about 70% let off. The draw cycle was just, oh my God, that draw cycle would kill you. And but my first Robin Hood was at 40 yards with that bow, and I was shooting Easton FMJs. And like you was talking about the very thin, narrow, pointed field tips, and it just the tip of the arrow that entered went all the way down and hit the back of the insert, just slammed into the back of the other arrows insert and field point, just all the way through, just perfect. Now I haven't done one like that since, but that was just the perfect. And just I was like, wow, I was amazed because those Easton FMJs, that's an aluminum arrow coated over,
yeah.
covered over that carbon fiber, but strong, very strong arrows. I still use them to this day for hunting and love them. And it drilled it. I was like, oh my gosh! So I had to take a photo of that, and then of course I kept it. And it's somewhere around this house. I kept that, and this sitting up, just my very first Robin Hood. I was like, I'll keep that till I could die, I guess.
Well, if you go out to my profile, there's a picture of a Robin Hood on there. That's what I did when I was at Cabela's.
Okay,
Anytime you see veins on an arrow, like stuff like that, it's not mine because I shoot feathers.
okay,
Still to this day, 4-inch feathers,
really?
on all my arrows, 4-inch feathers. Well, I started back in the 60s when your option was feathers or feathers. You could either get solid color barred feathers, or you could get shield cut or parabolic cut.
Okay,
That's pretty much your option. And then you had the rubber veins on your fishing arrows, but those were worthless anyway. So, most of them don't even have them on there because your string straightens it out. And then the bows then were either recurve or recurve or longbow, and
yeah.
either wood or fiberglass. That was that was your options for archery equipment, and mostly wood arrows. I have some of my original wood arrows left, and I have my first recurve bow. It's a fiberglass Ben Pearson 25-pound bow, and I set up do some bow fishing, and I made a bracket because I couldn't put it. My hands are small then. I can't even get my hands in it anymore. But yeah, I was like 10.
Oh goodness. Yeah,
Yeah, yes.
that's the only thing. Unfortunately, I was really late getting into bow hunting and to archery altogether. Um, because there was always these myths or just whatever you want to call it, the misconceptions, I guess, about bow hunting. And I can remember, I used to drive over the road. I was an over the road truck driver for about 10 and a half years. And I can remember driving down the interstate and looking, and I remember exactly. I was driving through North Alabama, and it was during bow season, and there was a hunter walking up close to the interstate, trailing a deer. And as I drove by him, I saw that he had his bow in his hand and everything. And you could tell he was blood trailing a deer because he'd get down every now and then, stop, and pick up a leaf and look at it. And you could tell he was blood trailing. And I thought, and I was out loud, I told myself, and that's why you don't bow hunt because of that right there. But like I said, I watched that. I got caught up in that TV show, Heartland Bowhunter, and I watched them, and I was like, well, they're not really, for the most part. I mean, I understand it's a TV show, and they do a lot of editing in TV shows, but I realized that they're not having to walk 200 yards to trail a deer. Some of their deer are 30 yards, 40 yards. They're not losing all these deer. Now, they may have to wait overnight sometimes, I guess, but it's not as bad as it was. I was led to believe, and so that really just, I'm like, I want to give it a try. And so, like, I went to Bass Pro. That's where it was. I went to Bass Pro and bought that first bow, and it was a hunting setup, and just fell in love with it. And so it's just, I hate that I was so late getting into it, and I wish I'd got into it a long time ago, because it to me it's so much. To me, I enjoy it so much more than rifle hunting. There's just so much more of a challenge, um, trying to get your bow up, draw it back, make that perfect shot without getting busted. Because the reaction time of deer, and I don't care where you're at, the reaction time of deer is just unbelievable. The things that I've seen the deer do in my short time is just blows my mind, to how quick they can hear something and respond and react in just the short amount of time that it takes for your bow to go off and for the arrow to travel to them. The things that they can do.
Yeah. Yeah, they can do stuff pretty quick, especially if they're already tensed a little bit.
Hmm.
Then they're just kind of like spring loaded and just explode off of where they're at, and a lot of them will drop low. So lots of times if you actually take a little bit lower shot, they're not going to jump up, they're going down, and then you still could get a good shot. But if you aiming too high and they drop down, you go right over the top of them. But sometimes you don't have a choice where you're going to pick your shot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I had several years ago. I had a doe. It was early season, so I hunt does early season, and then because where I'm at, the rut doesn't start until the end of December. So with bow season starting October 15th, you got a lot of time when the bucks they're here, but they're just not really. It's not like the rut is. The bucks aren't everywhere like they are during the rut. And so had a doe walk in, and so she was about 40 yards away. Perfect shot. She was standing broadside. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be easy. This is gonna be a chip shot. She's standing perfectly still. I drew back, shot, and I was just sitting there watching, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. She heard that bow go off. And when I recovered her, it was a fatal shot, but the recovery was unbelievable. I get up there, and the arrow, because she was, like I said, she was perfectly broadside. She was facing to my right, so I aimed for the upper portion of the heart. That way, like you said, if she drops, I'll still catch double lung. If she doesn't drop, then I've got a heart shot.
Yeah.
And she dropped a little bit, but what amazed me is that she spun towards me, and so her head slung around toward me, and then she turned her body. My arrow went through her neck and then entered to the back, entered through her back leg and stuck into her femur. And just luckily, it caught the blade on the broadhead caught her jugular. I just sit there for a while, just trying to figure out how in the world. And the only thing I can figure is she spun around, because I know she spun, but she heard the arrow, the shot go off, and she just spun. And that arrow, so quickly that by the time the arrow got to her, she was already turned halfway around. She was like bent in half, and that arrow went through her neck and stuck into her right leg, right rear leg, and she didn't go but maybe 10 yards. So it was a quick kill, but it was just amazing how quickly she had heard that arrow and spun so quickly that arrow was able to enter. The arrow actually entered the left side of her neck. So it's yeah.
They're quick.
Oh yes, oh yes, unbelievable.
Yeah,
Don't
it's you hear stories like that every once in a while.
so it's I don't know. It's you have to you really have to think. That's that's the other thing with about archery hunting. You hear some people say, well, I won't shoot a deer that's at 40 yards. And then I've had people say, well, I won't shoot a deer that's more than 20 yards. And some people have said they wouldn't shoot a deer that's under 20 yards because they're so close to you that they can hear everything that happens. And then by the time you shoot, the deer's gone. So,
Yeah.
it's really, it's a really a mixed bag of depending on who you talk to as to what kind of information you'll get or what kind of opinions you'll get out of people when it comes to archery and bow hunting.
Well, and I try to set up for 20-yard shots.
Mhm.
That's just, I normally, it's like I hear a trail, trying to find a tree, place my stand 20 yards away. They never get the script. They always come in closer.
Yeah, yeah. That's how
I've shot them so close that they were walking underneath my tree stand.
I've one of the first deer I killed, that doe. Um, like I said, I had to learn because I thought I knew what deer hunting was. So I had to really learn everything about deer hunting. And I mean, I was consuming information, and for the first couple of years, unfortunately, I was consuming misinformation because it didn't pertain to uh, our state. And Alabama is just not like a lot of other states due to the population that we have being a mix of different deer from different locations. And that doe, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get out of the stand about 9 o'clock. Is early season, so it's really warm down here early season. And 9 o'clock comes, I'll go to get out of the tree stand, and there's no deer around. And just as I'm about to exit the tree stand, she starts blowing at me. I look up, and there she is. So the next day,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit to 9:30. The next time I went hunting, I'm gonna sit to 9:30. 9:30 comes, I'm like, okay, nothing's around. I'm gonna get down. I started to get down from the tree stand, and there she is. And she starts blowing at me. And it was the same doe. She had just some very distinct white markings on her ears. And so the third time I'm out there hunting, I'm like, okay, so we're gonna go with 10 o'clock today. Well, 9:30 rolls around, a couple of bucks roll out. I'm like, oh, here we go. I got a buck. My first deer is gonna be a buck. It was a decent little 8 point. I'm like, this is gonna be great. And lo and behold, I look up and here comes that doe. She walks out, and at 40 yards, she looks up into the tree stand, looks dead at me, and starts blowing. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So she starts blowing, and finally she blows for about 10 minutes, and those bucks are like, okay, we're just going to leave because they're looking around trying to figure out what she's blowing at. So they left. Well, she leaves. So I waited till about 10:15. I'm like, you know what? I was irritated at this point. I'm going to get down. And I was turning around just about to step out of the stand, and I looked to my right, and 10 yards away, there she stood. And she's looking at me because she had circled around and actually kind of come in behind me. And she was looking at me, couldn't figure me out. So I stayed still and I waited for her to walk behind a holly tree. And I got back into the stand, got my bow out, knocked an arrow, and waited for her to exit from behind the holly tree. And as soon as she put her head behind, she'd walk behind the pine tree. And as soon as she did that, I drew. And when I drew, she came to a full stop. And that's when I shot her at 9 yards. And I was like, that was, like I said, that was more of a revenge kill, if anything.
Yeah, one of the things I do is if I'm in a tree stand and a deer comes by and catches me in it, last I don't hunt anymore. I never hunt that tree anymore. I'll
Yeah.
pull my stand and move it somewhere else, maybe in the same area, but in a different tree,
Yeah.
or set up another stand. Just leave that one sitting there because they've seen you in there, so they're going to constantly look.
Yes.
And there's a place up here that people hunt down by the river, and all the deer look up in the trees because they've had so many people hunting in there and then catch them in there. So that a deer don't normally look up in the tree
No.
because they don't have any natural predators above them except us.
Yes.
And that's at this place, they'll go by and they'll look up in trees. They're constantly looking up in trees, trying to see if they can see somebody get silhouetted. And that's the thing I always try to make sure is, where they're coming from, there's a tree or something behind me, so I'm not like silhouetted. Like
Exactly.
my background picture here, this guy is standing, there's bow hunters at full draw on this deer, but you can see his full outline. Now, if he'd have
Yes.
been on the other side with the trees behind him, you wouldn't have noticed he was there. And so
Exactly.
I try to think of that as I'm putting my tree stand up. What's behind me to break up my silhouette? And sometimes a different camo pattern will take care of that for you too.
Yeah.
There's some different camo patterns out there, and I actually interviewed one guy with a new camo pattern that so they've had some really good response from it, and guys standing out in middle fields, and the deer just look at them, they just looking through them, don't even notice they're there. So lots of times the camo pattern is something that you can change and try different patterns that break you up better, or just make sure that you're not silhouetted. That's something that can help, as far as that. But you got busted in it, same tree stand, you got busted again, you got busted again, and eventually then if a deer busts you, you either need to kill it for food or move the stand so she don't know where to look for you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That I'm not much of a trophy hunter. Like I said, I hunt 17 acres, and for a while I had that lease that butted up against my property, and that was great and wonderful, but unfortunately didn't last. And um, it's not very feasible for me to really, with my work schedule, to try to. By the time I get off work, get home, and take a shower and grab my hunting equipment and hunting gear, and then drive 30-35 minutes to public land and then walk into the woods. Well, I mean, it's going to be time to turn around and just like, well, the morning's over with. It's done. So it's not very feasible. And
Yeah,
so this year, I've really. Last year is when I lost my first season without my lease. And now, don't get me wrong. I've had encounters with some massive, very massive deer. Fortunately, I do live where I live. We have a good deer population, and we have some pretty decent deer. I mean, I'm not one for keeping up with inches and everything, but I would just guess I'd have to say that some of the deer that I've seen or encountered, um, easily 140, 130s, 140s. Like I said, my first buck was a 120 that I killed with a bow. Um, but it's just they're very few and far between. It's not like some of these places where every other deer is a 130-inch deer, 140-inch deer. That's not here. I don't even know if that's the state of Alabama, if that's even possible that every other deer is going to be 130 plus inch deer. But to me, it's more I just love the challenge, especially on small acreage, because I know the deer are not bedding on my property. They feed on my property. If they want water, they have to come through my property to get to the water. But the vegetation is extremely thick. For the most part, unless you're going to go out and do a lot of clearing, you're not going to get more than a 20-yard shot. And in some places, you won't even get that. We're talking 5 to 10 yards. A lot of swamp, uh, and so a lot of marsh, a lot of undergrowth. And so you're not going to get a lot of places to set up where there's natural openings to get a decent shot. So you got to get out and do some work to make it, or you just got to take the chance and try to get that shot off in a very short amount of time in a very small area. But that's the challenge is to me is trying to draw the deer to me. And that was something I had to learn was how to call. A lot of people don't believe in calling deer, whether it's a grunt tube or a doe estrus call or rattling. But that was something I really had to dedicate myself to learning how to do. Uh, is learning how to call deer and to bring them, even if it's just out of curiosity, to say, hey, what's going on over here? Let me go check it out. To be able to call them over to me so that I could be able to get that shot possibly. So it's a lot of learning, and you're always learning. You're always trying to figure out what the deer are doing or how they're reacting or how they're responding to what you're doing or what's going on around us.
well, yeah, one thing, with calling, there's only three responses you're going to get out of it. They're going to ignore it, run
Yep.
away, or come to it.
Yep.
And you don't know. Uh, I went out with my son, and I had a ladder stand. I put a little hang on stand right there so he could climb up the ladder and step over there and put his harness on and stuff. And he was all camoed up. You couldn't even see him. And I give him the deer call. I says, "Here, go. Here's the basic calls, and just call them. If they're coming in, don't call.
Yeah.
But other than that, until you see them, have fun." And you never know. And I had one time I had a little spike buck come in, and he come walking in. He ended up turning around, and I grunted on it and grunted on. Next thing you know, he goes up around, comes around, and comes on the other side of me. And then not even paying attention. Then behind me, where I couldn't even get a shot, a big buck come in.
That's
I
how it
didn't have
works.
a shooting thing behind me. Here's this big one come in, and I was just playing around with the little one to see how he reacted to it. And then I called in the big one, but I couldn't shoot because I had no lanes back there.
Oh yeah.
I never even thought they'd come in there.
One of my most gut wrenching moments was with him, just a massive buck, and I'd been keeping tabs on him all season, and it was during the rut, and so I had done a series of doe is a I guess you want to call them doe estrus calls, but series of doe calls and a couple of tending grunts, and this joker, I didn't know he was there. He was closer than I expected him to be because it wasn't long that I heard a limb, not just a little bitty branch. I heard like a tree limb that was laying on the ground. I heard that sucker snap, and I'm like, okay, that had to be something big to break that. That you could tell it was large. And I just happened to look to my right, and there he stood. He was maybe 30 yards away, but he was in the thickest, nastiest brush. There was no shot whatsoever. And he stopped and he was looking around trying to figure out where all this commotion was coming from. And the area I was hunting was a very well traveled travel zone. It was a pinch point, and the deer were using it a lot to get back and forth to the swamp and over to a cutover. And he stood there for a second, and I was using a hinge release, and it has a click to it. I use a click on my hinge release, which I probably shouldn't do that anymore, but I had inadvertently set off the jaw on the hinge release, and so it had clicked. I had inadvertently clicked that hinge release, getting it onto the D loop and getting ready, prepared for him to walk out. And he heard that click, and I watched him. He bristled, and his tail started flicking left and right real quick. And he turned around, and he's no, I'm done. And he kind of trotted off out of my life, never to be seen again. And I was like, oh my gosh, just the sickness from that. I was like, you got to be kidding me. All just once again, it comes down to just knowing your equipment and being prepared, knowing what you're doing. And I just didn't know what I was doing at the time. Wasn't really prepared for that. For that massive deer to walk out in front of me. I'm like, or next to me. It was a learning
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, it's amazing. You got to be careful on your releases too.
Oh
If
yeah.
you have a wrist strap that has the Velcro on it,
Hmm.
as you get ready to draw, there's always going to be a little bit of noise. I can't see it on this because it's not doing, but some of them, as you put them on, start to draw, you'll hear that Velcro
Yeah.
pop a little bit, and um, that's something you got to be careful of. Now, my other release, that's a Scott release, has a little hook on it, and as I pull trigger, it just releases, so it don't make any noise. And with this one, I can put my thumb on the string, go down and find my loop and hook up. So I don't have to look at, because we talked about this many times. All of us see this. You look down at your string or equipment, look up, the deer's looking at you.
Yes.
Now, the one I normally hunt with is the Carter Chocolate Addiction, and it has a hook that locks. So now I can let this hang off of my string so that I don't have to worry about, finding that. I just have to hook up to it. And well, this is a little bit thicker string than the other one I had. Anyway, I let it hang off my loop.
Yes.
So now all I do is find my release in between my two middle fingers, find the string, go down to find my release. Now I'm on my release, and now index in the first two here, and now then I can find my release, don't have to look at it, and then I can shoot. And the only sound you're going to have when it releases, but your bow's making noise, so it's all one big noise
Yeah.
because I don't have to go through the click. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but when you arm it, you have a little bit of click, just like you did on yours. Yeah, that little click. and
Yeah,
that's going to echo through a quiet forest for
exactly. That metallic click is deafening. And
yeah.
so it was interesting, but it just like I said, like last season losing my lease, and then this year is I'm just kind of like, well, so I really, like I said, I've these 2 years I've really just poured myself into this 3D archery, and I love it. I really enjoy it. I mean, it's not taking the place of hunting, but with the way I know that my deer season is probably going to end up, it's like, well, I'll have to make a decision here sooner or later about what I'm going to do with deer season and what I'm going to do about deer hunting. And do I really want to look at going into another lease, or do I just want to try to hunt the public land, or just it's challenging. This 17 acres is challenging. There's decent deer out here. It's harder than I'd say it's probably harder than what most people would really want to do. Um, your chances of if you kill what I guess what some people call a trophy buck, if you kill a trophy buck out here, you've really accomplished something because they're very few and far between, and you've got to bring them to you. You can't go to them. I you listen to all these podcasts and read all these articles, and you watch all this stuff, and they talk about you've got to go where the deer are at. Well, if you can't get to where the deer are at, if the deer are on somebody else's property and you don't have permission to be there, you can't do that. So
Right.
you do something to bring them to you. And so that's I've got to make a decision this year. Do I want to continue down that path? But we'll just wait and see how the season plays out.
Yeah, and you always have your own property, you can go to if you don't have time to go to the other one. But, check out some of the public properties because some of them are really decent to
Yeah,
hunt. I know I hunted public property for a long time,
yeah.
and I killed a few deer on the public property. Frick, my first deer was on a public land,
Okay.
and I was where the trail was. There was a bunch of bushes that I had to get above. And then the field was a big grass field. So there was actually no trees in there, just grass and kind of tall grass. So I found a tree that overlooked the trail I wanted to be on. And I had to get up about 20 feet in the air. And it was a 40-yard shot. Now, a little story about when you're up climbing. I was climbing up a tree. I didn't put my stand in or nothing. I'm climbing up the tree. I got some pegs in there, and here comes this couple with their kid, and they're walking through there. They're making all kinds of noise. I didn't care. It's not season anyway. And sometimes people walking through will stir up the deer and chase them to you, which I had happened later at that same place. But I'm up there. I'm looking at them. They had no clue. I wasn't in camo or nothing. I was just in blue jeans and a shirt, and I'm just sitting there on the side of the tree watching them walk by, and they didn't even know I was there. She got down to the guy I was hunting with, and he wasn't up quite as high, and they seen him, but never seen me. And that was my first year. My bow was set at 52 pounds, 145 grain four bladed muzzy. Um, like 2117 full length arrow. So this is like 36-inch long arrow. And I shot, and that arrow went up to the fletching coming out. The fletching stopped it from coming out the backside. When
Mm,
that deer turned, my whole arrow almost was hanging out the other side of that deer. I almost a clean pass through at 52 pounds with a heavy arrow because those 2117s, those were heavy arrows,
yeah.
and then a heavy broadhead on front of it. Now I'm shooting carbons and 100 grain three bladed muzzy.
Yeah.
Um, and so, now it's not unusual for me to go completely through the deer, and, I was setting up as a different spot in that same place, and the deer kept getting down to me, half hour after shooting time, you know, because I'm down. I don't like to get down right as shooting time. So I like this, wait a little bit, to make
Exactly.
sure there's nothing there. And they would come down through after shooting time every time. So I decided I'm going to go up the other end where they're coming from. And I want to be in the tree stand at 4 o'clock. So I got in the train at 4 o'clock. About 4:10, this deer come trotting through. Some people up walking around and kicked it up early. And, I ended up getting it. But that was another story because it was moving. It's like, okay, I shot and I got a little bit too far back. So basically, gut shot.
Yeah.
Waited for my hunting buddy show up. So we're probably 2 hours after I shot it. We, I got down in front of the blood trail and then I waited for Randy to show up. And we started tracking a little bit. Deer gets up, runs off. We stop. We go look where it was at, pool of blood where it was laying at. So that was the deer I shot. And it was supposed to snow 2, 3 inches that night. So we went straight out. We knew where it was at. We knew where to come back into. So we come back there. Him and his son were there, and I was there. And I says, okay. I says, we're looking for a lump with snow on it. There is no trail. And about 30 yards from where we kicked it up, I found it
Oh,
covered
wow.
in snow. Uh, Inside was still warm. The legs were froze. It was dead.
Wow.
And it got down to below freezing because it snowed, and
Oh,
it didn't
sir.
melt. So it was below freezing, and it died, and we cleaned it there, and like I said, it was still warm inside. So that's just something to remember. If you get a bad hit, don't chase it, because if we'd have kept looking for it, it'd have been long gone.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It only went about 30 yards, laid back down, because it only went about 30 yards to start with and laid down. And that's something to remember. It's like, if you have a bad shot, if you're a bow hunter or even a rifle hunter, you're going to have a bad shot sooner or later.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time. It's not if, it's a matter of when. You're going to have one you're going to have a bad shot here and there. It's going to take place.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
you learn from it. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, then it's like, okay, what did I do wrong?
exactly.
What can I do better next time? Did I aim wrong, or what was going on? And shooting in a moving deer is not your best option. But I was new. I hadn't shot that many deer yet.
Oh, yeah.
And we recovered it because we spent the time to come back and recover it. We could have just said, well, we're not gonna be able to find it. It's in the snow. Well, yeah, of course not, because you just said you weren't gonna find it. That's part of that mental game of archery. It's like, okay, we know where it's at. We're gonna look for a lump of snow. And sure enough, we found a lump, and it's like, that was the deer.
Yep.
And there's no blood trail, there's no footprints. I've also had them in the snow where there's snow cover,
Hmm.
and the blood trail was probably 4 feet, 3, 4 feet. There's no footprints except for this deer. The blood trail wasn't even close to the footprints, and it maybe went 20 yards most, and
Oh,
anybody could find it. I've had other blood trails where this was not a good year. This one year, I shot at a deer, completely miss it. It's like 10, 12 yard shot. Should have been easy shot. Well, no. I figured out later, it's like I just forgot to aim because I had a field tip with me. I picked out a leaf and I hit it. It's like, how did I didn't aim. I just drew back and shot.
yeah.
We all do that.
Yeah, yeah. I've done that. I've done that. Just pins. As soon as the pins get on first, like boom, let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this time this deer come up and I shoot. I hear it run off and I hear it crash. So I assumed it was down, but sometimes they're running off, they'll crash through the trees and whatnot. You won't, you know, if they're not down, they're just making noise. And I get down, pick up my arrow, almost no blood on it. A little bit of fat, almost no blood. So I said, okay, now what's wrong? Did I mess up another shot? So then I started walking up where it run off, because I see it run up top the hill and then over. And then I've got a blood trail that a 5-year-old could have followed to that deer. In fact, that was like in November, I think a month later, the grass was still stained
Good
from how
grief!
much blood it lost.
Wow.
And no blood on the arrow. And I used feathers. And there's really almost no blood at all on the whole arrow.
It's
And
that's. I
of
mean,
course, I was shooting uh, probably right about a 420 grain arrow at 70 pounds. So it was moving.
yeah, yeah. I right now my current setup. Um, I shoot an Elite Omnia, and it's not blazing fast. I think the rating is 347 for the IBS speed,
Yeah.
and I shoot a 511 grain arrow. And last year I swapped to I don't know if you've heard of them, Severed. That's the broadhead I'm shooting is a severed broadhead.
No, I haven't.
Um, they they're a smaller company, and I kept hearing people on there's a forum, was it Archery Talk forum, and I'd
Yeah,
heard several people um, talking about them, and I thought, well, I'm gonna. Everybody kept talking about how accurate they were, how accurate they were. I'm like, well, I'm gonna, because I've been shooting swackers, I've tried Rage, I've tried. I used to shoot Muzzy Trocars. That was the first
right.
broadhead I shot was a Muzzy Trocar. But I went with a mechanical, and because early on I was like struggling to get those Muzzy Trocars, that fixed blade to get my arrows, trying to get everything tuned. I was just struggling with that broadhead tuning at that point in my life, I guess. So I swapped to mechanicals, and yeah, the severed broadheads, they are so accurate as far as field point accuracy, and I swapped to them last year, and they're cut on contact, and which is one of the main reasons why I swapped from Swackers to that, because the Swacker broadheads, as much as I love them, as accurate as they are, um, if you something goes wrong and you don't get a complete pass through, that open wound doesn't leave much of a trail. I've struggled to trail several deer because you hit that offside shoulder, and there's no pass through on that. Even shooting a 511 grain arrow, and
Yeah, I
so
can. I,
it
I've
just
actually. I'm gonna share my screen. I have that severed broadhead up that you're talking about, and I'll leave a
yes,
link in the description.
yep,
Those if you want to check them out a little better. And that looks pretty nasty one. One little trick, because I shoot muzzies, and I tune mine in so that I can hit X's with my broadheads.
mm-hmm,
And one of the keys is um, where the broadhead meets the insert. There's I don't know if you can get them in or not. There's something called a U-bar, which is a cone-shaped washer, and then a rubber O-ring.
yes,
And what you can do is you can tune them. I start with the broadheads matching my fletching,
okay,
and then
yes,
I can crank them tighter, a little bit looser, and you can actually direct where that broadhead hits. And
okay,
then once it gets done, I'll take like a whiteout or something, and I'll mark on the broadhead and on the shaft, so I can always know if it's lined up in that spot, that's where it should be. And
okay,
and that's how I tune my fixed blade broadheads. Now, as you're getting faster and faster with the bows,
mm-hmm,
if you start pushing that 300 feet per second or faster, fixed blades will not tune very well at all,
yeah,
because they just don't. You have the wings up front and the wings in the back, and they're both trying to control the broadhead. So by tuning the front wings to help to align with the back wings, now then you get your good aeroflight. But as you go faster and faster, the turbulence between the front of the arrow to the back of the arrow interferes with the back of the arrow, and now then you aren't getting good flight. So the mechanicals, they don't have as much up front. If you look in the front of them, there's very little profile sticking out. Now, do they fly exactly like field tips? No.
no,
They're longer for one, and they do have some wings. Are
exactly,
they at normal hunting distance at 20 yards or even 30 yards? Are you going to notice a difference? Probably not. Um, so that's the thing you got to look at. Are we shooting 100-yard at target? If we're shooting 100 yards, well, that's kind of a risky shot anyway.
yeah,
Uh, Now, earlier we talked about the knock-on release,
mm-hmm,
back tension release. Oh, here's the one I had. And let me close that. And that's the release there. Now you
yes, it
talked
is,
about if you try and jerk it, kind of like a seat belt is what I was kind of envisioning. If you take a seat belt and pull it out slowly, it extends, but if you jerk on it, it locks up. And
yeah,
that's similar, probably similar, I think, to how this goes. But this is the website here for it, Knock on Custom Archery,
yes,
and I'll leave a link for that as well, just to
yeah,
make it easier for everybody to find it,
yeah.
and also leave a link to my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix Yourself, as well as the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group. So
Well,
you
if
can
you don't
always go out
mind,
there and check those.
well, if you don't mind, I would like to mention one particular company.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
This company, like I said, this is my third year. Well, just finished up my third season shooting competitively, and I shoot in the senior known 50 this year. First 2 years I was shooting senior known 45, and I mean I believe I did fairly well for just getting into it. And so this year was Senior Gnome 50. About halfway through the season, I actually got invited to join is Phantom Cracker Bowstrings. And they asked me to join their pro staff. And I'm being new to it. I'm like, well, sure. And so I'll let me look into it, because one of the problems I've had over the years has been with my strings, specifically the serving. And I won't mention names, but there's been four of the big brands where every year it's just the serving would just complete. I've had serving completely unravel, whether it's center serving, the serving on the cables where it passes through the guide, the serving around down there at the end of the loop where it connects to the cams. Have had so many issues with serving, and so when Phantom Bowstrings invited me to join their pro staff, I was like, sure, not a problem. I'll look into it. And I looked at their product and read reviews about it. And I would like to say that if anybody is looking for a good set of bowstrings, they have what's called their Bloodline. That's it right there. Their Bloodline
Right.
bowstring. That is a waxless bowstring. You don't have to wax it. And I can tell you firsthand, rain, and when I say rain, we've been having some torrential downpours here in Alabama this summer. And I shot a tournament in one of those torrential downpours. And when it was over, uh, several of the guys I was shooting with, I mean, you'd shoot and you just watch their bows just rain, just to their strings were saturated. And mine
Yeah.
were completely dry. There was no effect whatsoever on speed. I'm shooting those same strings now. I've shot them all season, the same set of strings, and just unbelievable. But they've got a great product, and really anybody looking for a set of strings. I know you've got the other major brands, but this is a very good brand and an outstanding set of strings. Very good price, and you won't be disappointed. Anybody that decides they want to give them a try, you will not be disappointed. Just really upstanding guys building strings, building outstanding strings. So just wanted to give them a shout out because I appreciate what they've done for me this season. Um, Taking a chance to let me join their pro staff, and I appreciate that. But yeah, I appreciate you putting that up as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's now BCY strings. That's what I use when I make my strings.
Hmm.
I use the 8125 is what I make my strings out of, and then I've got the B500 I use for like traditional strings. And I've heard of the Bloodlines before. Uh, I believe, if I remember right, they have a string material made specially for them, or they put some kind of coating. I forget
Yeah.
exactly what it is they do. Um, but let's see, Bloodline one string and two cables or solo cam,
Mm.
140. This one's 150. So that's 70 for individual strings. That's actually not that bad of a price for a string,
Not.
especially made from 8125. I think when I was making strings, I'd charge like $100 to make the strings for compound bows when I had my store, and I closed it in 2004. And um, yeah, that's pretty good. Now the
Well, I'll
advantage
tell you
with me
this.
making strings is I could make them, in a short period of time. They didn't have to order them.
Yeah. Well, they've got, I know right now with it coming up to hunting season, they said that their turnaround is 2 weeks. So you're getting a custom set of strings. You go in, pick your color, tell them what side, what bow you're shooting and the strings and everything. But, just like anybody else. But here's the thing that sold me is I'd say I probably got at least 3,000 shots on this set of strings that I'm running right now. And it was halfway through the season. So it's not even a full season, but I've got at least 3,000 shots on their strings. And there has been zero serving issues whatsoever. None. Zero peep rotation, zero peep movement. And I'll just be honest with you. Last year I spent, because that's one of the things that I don't do is make my own strings and reserve my own strings. I just not comfortable. That's something I feel that, if you don't know what you're doing, you just leave it alone and let somebody that does know what they're doing take care of it. And so Last year I spent over. Now it's a good group of guys down there. They charge me maybe $20. I drive 63, 65 miles one way, go down there, and they would reserve whatever needed to be reserved right there while I waited, and then drive back. And they charged me like $20 to reserve it. And last year I spent over $160 just in $20 increments to have one set of strings was a week old. I put them on
No.
the bow, was shooting, and one of the servings at the where it connects to the cam. That serving, I had a 3-inch loop of serving after a tournament. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I took it down there and had them reserve it. I know some people are like, oh, that's not an issue. If you've ever had a bow, if you ever had a compound bow blow up in your hand, that will put the fear of God in you. I've had I've had two bows blow up in my hand, and it just and neither time was it my fault. I'll go ahead and tell you right now, the first time somebody had, I had this was when I first got into it, is that PSC decree. I had taken it to somebody to have some work done on it. It was a new bow shop, little bow shop, and I took it to them and brought it home, shot it, and the third shot, the top limbs cracked. They had just gotten a brand new bow press in, the one that's got the big wheels on it. It's got like an X
Yeah.
or whatever, X press, or I can't remember. And so I took it down there, covered in warranty. They replaced the limbs and everything. I went back, picked it up, and the second shot, that thing exploded. It snapped my Easton F and J in half, and it literally pieces. There was pieces of that bow that were never found, and it that right there. I mean, it just exploded literally. They had I got I got in touch with PSC, and I took what was left of the bow to somebody else, and it turns out they had pressed it improperly. They just gotten this brand new press. They didn't know about it. In fact, when the first time when the top limbs cracked, I was the very first bow that they had pressed with that new press.
No.
So, needless to say, I never went back to that bow shop, and
No, I wouldn't either.
I stayed clear of them from that point forward. And then I had a Hoyt Defiant explode in my hand, but I think that was because it was the very first edition of the Hoyt Defiant, and they had a recall because the way the cams were rolling over or something, it was wearing the strings out, and so the string broke at full draw with me. And after that, I don't play with strings. I'll let somebody else that knows what they're doing with the strings.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to go to somebody that's just got a brand new press, they don't know how to use it, or
No,
somebody that's never made a string. And I've made lots and lots of strings.
yeah.
Um, and I learned how to make strings. And in fact, when I first got my shop, they're still using steel cables.
Oh my gosh.
The PSC Nova was steel cables. And when I went down into the dealer school, they taught you how to make steel cables.
Oh my gosh.
And I've made a few of them, not a lot of them, but if you have one break, you have to make two because they have to be made exactly the same length. And you
Oh,
can't use one that you already got because you can't get it exactly the same. And if one broke down, it's probably not too far from breaking anyway.
oh
So you'd
wow.
replace them in pairs, and then I could get a set of cables for $20.
Hmm.
So it wasn't too bad, but
Yeah,
see, because the steel cables you can't twist.
yeah, you can't do,
So if you're off by an eighth of an inch, you're off by an eighth. Your cam will not ever time right. So you have to be exact as you can. An eighth of an inch is too much.
yeah.
16th of an inch is too much. You got to be more accurate than that. So that's why you have to make two at a time. You make two of them. And now the last time I heard, been probably 5, 6 years ago, um, I'd heard you could get them for $100 a piece. Now I doubt you can even find them at any price.
Yeah, I doubt that.
And if you have an old bow that has steel cables on it, you're not going to get it repaired. If the cables are bad, you're done. You could probably make a string for it just so it would have something on it to hang on a wall, but you
Yeah.
never want to try and shoot it just because they're not going to work. And when you get a lot of the strings that come on your kind of your lower end bows,
Mm,
um, even PSC was bad at this. The black and white strings that they had, they weren't the zebra strings, but they were black and white is what they
yes.
had. They never stopped moving. So my staff shooters, just like Randy, he wouldn't even shoot a bow until I made him a new string. I'd make him a new string. And of course, then you're all custom colors and whatnot,
Yeah.
whatever worked good on the bow. And and then I've never had trouble with the BCY 8125
Yeah.
stretching at all after I make them, because part of the process, a lot of them make the string and they put them under tension and store them for a day or whatever under tension. No, I've put them under tension before I even start doing anything with them, because if
Yeah.
I'm using two colors, I'm going to take the wraps I'm doing with the one color, tie the two colors together, and continue wrapping. And then when I get done, I'm going to tie those two ends together, so I have a continuous strand. There's no two separate strings, because I tried doing that one time. It's like I could never get them even. If they're two separate strings, now you got to try and make the two separate strings even. So when you put pressure on it, you put pressure on both colors the same. So I tied them all together, and then I stretch it out as far as I can, and then I will turn. On a string making jig, there's two pieces and they're separated between them. So you turn them and it puts pressure on your string because it's trying to stretch it. So I will do that and I will stretch that string out, and you can pluck it like a guitar string.
Yeah.
And then that's how much pressure. So now I know all the strands have the same amount of tension on it. And then I'll turn it back and start serving. I will serve what goes around. So I serve my loops.
Hmm.
I don't like to have, because lots of times you won't get all the strands on the pin, and so I serve that on both ends, and then I'll stretch them out, and then I'll serve them, and all along, and then I'll twist it, before I do the serving on the ends. I just serve the end loop, and then I will put my twist in it. So I've got twists underneath the serving that goes around the cams, and then of course the center serving is done there, and I'll serve that, and I serve it pretty tight, and I don't have any trouble with my strings separating, coming loose, because I do serve them on fairly tight. And a lot of times when they're made on commercially, the machine actually spins the string, and you just hold the serving, and you can run it down and tie it
Yeah.
off. Well, you don't have a lot of tension on that.
No. And it will
Uh,
separate very easily.
yes, and now on some of your cams that have a real sharp bend in them, all your serving is going to do a little separating there,
Oh
just
yeah.
because you're trying to bend that at such a sharp angle. Now, those that don't have that sharp angle don't have that much problem. And I've gone through that, and it's like, okay, those with the hard lobes on them, you just got to serve them a little bit tighter. And that's a couple of things that you learn as you're making strings and come across different ones. And now a lot of the new bows now, I can't do anything with them because I can't press them. I have
Yeah.
one of the old Apple presses with the bow when the limbs, are out pretty long, and I could press them.
Yes.
Um, I had I had a couple of newer ones that I can still press because there's enough forward, but those that are parallel or beyond parallel, I can't
Yes.
press them. You got to use something like that easy press that pushes on the end of them, and
Yes.
and even I got a portable bow press that just has a little cable, and it won't work on the beyond parallel limbs because
Yeah.
it just won't efficiently press them. And when they're split limbs, you have to put a little jig on there that pushes both limbs, because you can't, on a fixed one, you just put that little pin through there. It's just like a little piece of a bolt or a square tubing. But on the split limbs, you can't press them that way. You have to put on each one individually. And so on some of those, well, if you can get the string off, I can make you one, but you're gonna have to put it back on. But going to somebody that knows what they're doing and
Oh,
setting up your strings, I told this one time, this guy got a new string, took it out one of the box stores, put it on. He come in, string's on wrong. It's like
mm,
$20, I'll fix it. Well, he didn't buy the string from me, because that's part of when you buy the string, because I make
yeah.
it, I put it on correctly. And it's on wrong. So he took it back out there. Come back. It's still wrong. It's like eventually after the second time going out there having it on wrong, he paid me the $20 to put it on correctly. But what you look for is when your strings cross, they're supposed to cross with a little gap between them.
Yes.
And if they are rubbing because they put them on wrong, now as you draw back, those strings are rubbing.
Oh
And it
yeah.
won't be long. You've worn through that and you're breaking a strand. Next thing you know, ball blows up in your hand because the string broke.
Catastrophic. That's what it's going to
Yeah.
happen. It's going to be catastrophic. You that ooh, that right there. Like I said, I've had that happen twice, and it just ever since then I'm like, okay, anything dealing with strings, I'll let somebody that knows what they're doing. I'd rather. I mean, especially now with the price of bows nowadays, you go out and buy a bow. I mean, if you go buy like, well, Elite just came out with their new Target bow, and I mean it's 17.99.
Yeah.
Do you really want to go out and take your chances with a string? And because if that string breaks, everything on that bow is going to be, I mean, everything there is going to be susceptible to damage, you
You
know?
know, back 25 years ago, a high-end bow, just the bow, no, not ready to shoot package, just the bow, no sight, no rest, just the bow, was about 900 to $1,000
Mm-hmm.
for the high-end bow. And now if I was going to replace one, I'm going out spending that 1,500 or $2,000 for a bow because I wouldn't accept anything but that top end because, well, that's all I've been shooting for
Yeah.
25 years.
Yeah.
As the higher end bows because, well, I had a shop, so I was access to the Pro Series of PSE bows,
Yes.
and you can't get the Pro Series at a box store. They don't
No,
sell
you
them at the
can't.
box stores. You have to be actual pro shop to get the Pro Series. And there are some features in those Pro Series that are really nice.
Yeah.
Um, but most people, you don't need that. Grab
No.
one of like your Stinger X. I remember when that was out. I was selling bows at Bass Pro when that Stinger X come out, and that was
Yeah.
a good ready to shoot package.
It was. It was a good
And
shooting bow. I mean, it was good. I just felt that I wanted to, after a month of owning it, I was like, okay, I'm ready to step up to a big boy bow. And I went and got that. I had to go to a bow shop, and that was my first time going to a bow shop. Really, was to go get that PSC Decree IC, and it's. I want to say it's been downhill ever since because ever since then it's just once you get into it, it's not a cheap hobby. I will say that it's not a cheap
no,
stuff to get into, not at all. But you can still. I mean, you can still go out and do a lot of the, pretty much the same thing with a $500 bow. You can go to a thrift store or pawn shop, I guess, and buy a bow. I'd make sure I have it inspected before I drew it back. But
right.
you go out and buy a bow as long as everything on it's good to go. You can go out and do the same thing with that you can with a $2,000 bow.
Well, yeah, and I like to say, I've got this $2,000 bow that doesn't even come close to fitting you, or I got this $500 pawn shop bow that'll fit you perfectly. Which one's worth more?
Exactly.
The $500 bow because you can't shoot the $2,000 bow.
Nope.
Now, if they both fit you perfectly, of course, the $2,000 bow is going to be it's going to have features that you don't have. Maybe it's a smoother draw cycle. Maybe it's a little more speed, or it's a little more forgiving, or faster, or whatever the features you like to have. Or maybe it just feels better in your hand, less vibration. Because the low ram bows, face it, they're not going to be as smooth in your hand
Yeah.
as the other ones. But get what fits you. Start off like you did. Start off with something on the low end, the ready shoot packages, because you don't know
Yep.
what rest you want. You
Nope.
don't know what sights you want. Um, you don't really know what arrows you want.
Exactly.
Get a bow that fits you. Get the cheapest arrows you can get because your skill's not going to be good enough to group um, 1 inch groups
No.
when you first start off.
No. No.
Um, Now, of course, if you're taught by somebody like me, then you possibly could, because I've done that. I've taken guys with 6 inch groups and bringing them down to, 1 inch groups several times. I had one guy at the store, I spent 45 minutes with him, and he's now shooting 1 inch groups. And had another guy that I did online 45 minutes, and from, like a 3 or 4 inch group, the 3 arrows touching in 2 weeks after I helped him. And then the one guy I told you about that he'd been shooting 2 weeks, never shot before, and gets a Robin Hood. So uh, proper form and proper fit is what you're going to get. And like you found out, you can't do that on your own. You have to have some help.
You do. You do.
And and that's where Arch Talk 101 Facebook group is comes in real handy because we have archers out there that have been shooting 60 years. Um, we've got archers that have been shooting 60 days. Uh, we've got professional archers, semi-pro, uh, those that just like to hunt,
Yeah.
those that just like to do target shooting. We have other instructors out there besides me that we all have a little bit different ideas on stuff, and I teach what works for me. I
Hmm.
teach everybody the same thing. Then see how it works for them and then modify it.
Exactly. Yes.
My way works perfectly for me. It may not work the same for you, but I'm going to start you off. And I start off, here's what I want you to do, and here's why. I'm going to give you that why. If you don't understand the why, you don't care what the how is, right? Why am I doing this?
Exactly.
Yeah, because I told you so is not the appropriate answer. That's somebody that don't know how to teach.
Yeah.
Uh, you might be an excellent shot, but if you can't teach why I want you to do it this way and explain why, and then see what you're doing. If you have a physical condition that you're trying to compensate for, like one guy had MS and he had to lock the arm out because I
Yeah.
don't teach locking the arm out. That
Hmm.
puts that arm in the way of being hit. And you have no place for your force to go to your target because it's already locked out. But with MS, you can't have that arm bent because it just shakes. You can't do it. So we had to modify stuff enough that he could do that. So if you have a physical problem, hey, let's work through it.
Yeah.
That's the advantage of getting somebody that has taught many, many things for over a long period of time. And I did Hapkido for about 20 years, and I take a lot of what I learned in doing um, you know, joint manipulation, arm locks, arm bars, pressure points, and all that, incorporate that into what I learned on the back tension release and how to shoot when I was learning that way. And I incorporate all of that. And so this is what works best for me because of that. And, the pressure point on your hand, the way I explain it, those that have martial, well, you understand what a heel palm strike is.
Yes. Yes.
And that is the pressure point you put on the bow. That is where you're pushing from there. Like you're breaking a board with a heel palm. That's the force I want to do the same force when you're shooting a bow. That arm should do the exact same thing.
Hmm.
And if it doesn't, then something is wrong with your form or something or other. And that's where basically you follow the lifeline down your hand to this hard part between the thumb and the index finger. And as you probably know, if you do any joint locks, if you push on the meaty part below the thumb, your wrist wants to turn.
Hmm.
Now in Hapkido, we use that technique to lock your wrist up and throw you with it. And on a little finger, it wants to push the other way. But if you push on that spot, your hand doesn't do anything. And in fact, if you're holding out and push on the one part, where do you feel it? You feel it on, push on the thumb, it feels on the inside and kind of push out to the elbow. And push on the other side, it puts pressure on the elbow side. But if you push there, as soon as you push there, you feel it in the shoulder.
Yep. Exactly.
And that's what you want to do is you want to do that. And I see a lot of archers with their shoulders pushed up and their jaw back, their shoulders are pushed up.
Hmm.
One, guaranteed you're going to have shoulder problems because all the force is into the shoulders, not through the joints. Drop the shoulder down. Now all that force goes through from your your forearm, the hand holding the bow, goes all the way through your body back to the other shoulder and out, push out through your elbow. So your elbow is going to line up through your whole body to the tip. You should have a straight line between your elbow and to the tip of the arrow. If it's back, your draw link's too long. If it's forward, your draw link's too short.
Yeah.
So if you go there, depending on where you're going to bend it. Now, I shoot my recurve with the same technique, and I don't use an arm guard.
Okay.
I don't need one because it's far enough away.
Yeah.
Uh, when I first started, my draw length I thought was 32. It's 29 and a half. When I went down to learn back tension laces, your draw length's 29 and a half. Your bow's set for 32. This is a Friday night. Saturday nights lessons, your bow has to be set at 29. Well, there's no reason to continue on at the lessons. And
Yeah.
at that time, this is in 95, we're paying like $250 for this class, three night class. So I go out, I finally get it down, changing strings and cables. Because if you shorten your string or your cables or lengthen them, it'll change your draw length. And of course, your peak weight as well. So I got it down to the 29 and a half. And then I started shooting, and it's like, oh, this feels short. I don't like it. I don't like it. But I'm still doing it because, I'm paying this money. I'm going to learn. So I finally learned it, finally got comfortable with that. Now I shoot 29.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, shoot a half inch shorter because now I don't hit my arm
Yeah.
in the wintertime. Now, down there where you're at, you don't have the cold winters like we do up here. It's not unusual for us to be below freezing while it's hunting season. And I
Yeah.
have big, heavy coat on. That extra half inch shorter draw length, I don't hit it anymore.
Okay.
Because before I knew all that, I did catch my arm one time, shot at the deer. We're supposed to be. I hit it in the back leg with my muzzies. I shattered the bone. It's in like three pieces. And then I still got the deer, but it was good to eat. But that's what some things can happen if you catch that arm. Now at that shorter
Okay.
draw length, big heavy coat, I don't hit my arm.
Yeah.
And I shoot the recurve the exact same form. The only difference is my hands in a different position. It's turning with the fingers down. You still don't want to have them twisted sideways because that twists the string, but
Mm.
it's there. Now if I use my wrist strap, my punching knuckle is behind the jaw, and that pressure point by the bottom of the ear,
Yeah.
that's where that goes. Now when I'm shooting my handheld, the string is in the same place on my face the whole time. I got the
Yeah.
kisser button and then the nose and the peep. And now the difference is between here, now my hand's turned over.
Okay.
So it's turned over. So basically my ring finger knuckle is in
Hmm.
that same point because
Yes.
that puts everything in the same alignment. And that's what I do. So I can shoot, I can grab my um, wrist strap or my handheld. It doesn't matter. There's really no difference
Yeah.
other than the fact that this one's buried into my hand. And this one, when I put this one on, this trigger finger it's really tight, drawing it back because I put my finger behind. My hand rests on it. This knuckle right here is resting on that trigger. So
Okay.
you don't pull with the trigger.
Yeah.
So I always tell archers when I find out, they're an archer, and I say, do you use a wrist strap? And they say, yeah. I'll give you first lesson free. Quit pulling the trigger. And a lot of them look at me, it's like, what? How do you know? I've taught lots of people to not pull the trigger. And then the quickest way to tell if they're coachable, I say, okay, take your index finger, point it out, concentrate on the spot. Now don't think about anything but that spot. Now make your finger move without thinking about the finger. Oh, I can do it. Switch the other side, your non-dominant side. Oh yeah, I can do it. Lesson's over. I can't teach. No more lessons. You're not teachable. Once if they get past that, it's like, sometimes you've done it so much with dominant hand. So it's
Yeah.
almost like, uh, I can't do it. Okay, now you can be taught because now you realize that you can't pull the trigger without thinking about the finger because it's fine motor skill. Now we
Yeah.
get in a rifle because you shoot rifle. I
Yes.
rifles, a long time. I was on a rifle team in high school. So the difference is you don't use any fine motor skills to aim.
No.
If you're prone, you're laying out, your body's all there. And then, if you're sitting or kneeling or standing, my steady stick is my elbow into my hip. And everything is all steady. All you have to do is gently squeeze the trigger. So that's
Hmm.
the only thing you need is the finger moving. Now I did hear one guy because he's shot long range and sniper and everything, so that's how he does it. But he's figured out how to use that technique still because he's not really thinking about the finger as much as it's just kind of a habit.
Yeah.
He's done it so many times that switching to something else is be too foreign. But
Yeah.
how many of us are snipers shot thousands of rounds with a
Yeah.
rifle using that technique? In that
Exactly.
case, we would teach a little differently.
Yeah.
It could be done, but most people are not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Somebody plays the piano with all everything going on and singing and everything. Yeah, that's a whole nother skill level that we're not even going to talk about
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's hours and hours and hours of practice just to be able to do that.
Oh yeah.
And because you have to, the fingers have to be subconsciously moving.
Exactly.
They have to know what they're doing without thinking about them. And that's kind of the difference between an amateur and professional.
Hmm.
An amateur practices to get it right. A professional practices so they can't get it right or wrong.
Exactly. Exactly. I stumbled across that statement somewhere, and it resonates with me, and so I have incorporated that into my archery. In that, when I'm practicing, like right now with the overcoming target panic, the whole thing is it's not to practice until you get it right. It's to practice until you can't do it wrong. There's just no way to do it wrong. You just because if you don't, then you're so easy to get back into that old mode or old way of doing things, and then you're just going to be right back where you were.
Well, one thing you might try practicing, seeing how you know what a heel palm strike is, and you know the process of doing it, you're going to go straight to the target. If you're going to break a board with, you're going to go past the board. You're not going to focus on the board, right?
Right.
You're going to focus through the board. That's what they teach us in martial arts. Don't focus on the board because you're just going to hit the board over and over and over. So
Exactly.
incorporate that into your shooting. Focus on the target is what you want to do. So think about that heel palm strike, that pressure point there that is going to go all the way through the shoulder. Push on your bow and push that to that target. So when you're done, you should be pointing to the target. So if my camera is up here, so if I'm going to be shooting at that camera, I'm going to be focusing on constantly right at the lens, and I'm going to good. So like the index finger, because your hand is turned a little bit, the index finger should point to your target. So
Yes.
think about that. So
Okay.
as you're shooting, when you're done, you have a sling on your bow, right? Or you use a thumb sling or something.
No, I don't use any kind of a sling. I stopped using
Oh,
those because I would I don't know, just a lot of times, no matter how I had it set up, it would just something would not. It just kind of be a hindrance, and so I actually took the sling off. Um, I don't know. I mean, I can always put it back on.
yeah, I would. And don't have it so tight that it pulls onto your wrist.
Hmm.
You want it just tight enough and just loose enough that when you shoot,
Hmm.
that bow will hang off of that sling.
Okay.
Because what I want you to try is don't hang on to the bow at all. So you put pressure. What I like to do is when I get ready to draw, I open my hand up, let it sit into my hand, and then let my hand close. I do not grip the bow. I do not put my fingers on the bow. I leave my fingers completely relaxed. Like if your hand's out your side,
Yeah.
you don't hold your hand like this down at your side, or you don't do like this down at your side. It's just completely relaxed. So there's no tension in the fingers at all. So as you're pushing, so I'll put pressure on that and a little pressure to bring the bow up, and then I'm going to draw. So now what I want you to do, of course, make sure you have an arrow in there. Of course, you know that. But I want you to be pushing with the heel palm
Okay.
part of your hand, and your hand is off at a little bit of an angle. I want you to shoot. I want you to only concentrate on pointing the index finger to the target.
Okay.
Like I was showing with here, the index finger straight to the target. So that's pointing right up. If I keep going, I'm touching the can't well blank it out. You can't see. So as
Yeah.
you draw back, focus on that, and then pushing with the heel part of your hand. And when it goes off, I want you to just concentrate on your holding it. You shoot right-handed.
Yes.
Okay.
Right
So I
hander.
want your left hand, I want you to point that index at your target,
Okay.
right at the X. So when you're done, I want you to keep practicing, and all you're focused on is the hand and the finger pointing to the X.
Okay.
So until you can get that every time, don't worry about your pins.
Yes.
And you can get whatever distance you need, to make sure you're going to hit the target, of course.
Yeah.
If it's a little big target, you might get a little closer, but not too close because now then your pins don't match up with arrows going. So keep practice that until you get to where it's always pointing to that target. Now, you'd be probably amazed how close you're actually getting with just by doing that because
Yes.
all your focus is going to it. Now the release hand should go back. Make sure it doesn't leave your face because now then it's pulling the string. It's going to send it off to the left. You want it to drag it across your face And if you can, I can't touch my arm, just won't.
Can't
I
either.
can force my thumb. But a lot of us, our shoulders aren't tight enough, but or a little too tight, right? So let it come back, however it goes. Now, the hand will actually go back. My hand's never gone back
No.
like that. It just comes straight back. Um, I don't know why mine doesn't, but it just doesn't. I did see one guy was down at PSE down at dealer school when he shot on the gorilla team, which is 90 pounds, and he shot that hand come flying back. And one guy was watching him shoot, which he didn't care. You could watch him all you wanted, but he got too close one time. That hand come back and bam, smacked him on the head. So when you're watching somebody, make sure you're not standing directly behind them.
Oh
And when
yeah.
I'm teaching, when I go behind them, I put my hand on their elbow. So I have some kind of defense in case they do pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Because you don't cross in front. You always got to cross behind them, but hand on the elbow and then you go. But um, try that and then let me know how that turns out. See if
Okay.
that
Sure.
helps any.
Yeah.
There's always different ideas. And, somebody listening to the podcast might have a different idea. Try them.
Yes.
If it doesn't work, don't do it no more.
Yeah. Exactly.
If it seems to help, not don't try it one time. It didn't work one time. Well, you've got to practice.
You got to
Give it a shot and
Oh yeah.
see. And even to take some videos of it. Set the camera so you can see what's going on. And it's nice to have pictures from the front so I can see what you're doing up here on the face. Pictures
Yes.
from behind so we can kind of see what your shoulders are doing, and then from behind you where your elbow is pointing, so I can see what that hand is doing. Don't get in front of it. If you have a camera down low pointing up, that'd be right. Make sure you don't shoot your camera. But then you can see, okay, what is that hand doing? Is it going straight to the target? I want to see the elbow going through the shoulder, through the clear to the hand, and when that hand goes off, it should be pointing to your target.
Yes.
And just like if you're shooting a handgun, put in your hand, look at your target, bring it up, now look at your sights. If you're not on, either your grip's off or that's not the right gun for you.
Exactly.
And one of the things that I used to do on the rifle team all the time is, like if we're in prone or standing or kneeling, I would take um, close my eyes, breathe in, breathe out. Are my sights on target? No. Adjust your body. Breathe in, breathe out until you breathe in, breathe out. You're right on target. You want them. Breathe in, breathe out, squeeze. And you do the same thing in archery. So what
Yeah.
you do is you draw back, eyes closed, get everything up, open your eyes. Where's your pins? Well, if it's off to the side, maybe you need to roll the shoulders back a little bit and drop them down because that's going to pull into your body closer. And then maybe your foot, you need to open up your stance or close your stance. I teach
Yes.
a completely closed stance, so you take an arrow between your toes straight to your target.
Hmm.
um, but if you don't have that grip right, you will be hitting your arm.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure you have that grip right. So that's why a lot of beginners, like at the outdoor events and stuff like that, we teach more of an open stance so that it keeps it off the arm. Because if I
Yeah.
teach you my way, you will hit your arm because they won't grip it right. They grip it like a bat.
Yeah.
So try that and see if that don't help you out a little bit.
Right. Sure will.
Um, because it's that's something that um, I've seen help people and things I have to remember when I'm shooting. So it's like, what's that? It's not what I'm teaching. Do what you're teaching because it works.
I definitely will.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you said the name of that Facebook group. You said it's Archery Talk 101 Facebook group.
Yep. Same as the podcast name.
Okay, I'll definitely. I found the podcast. I'll definitely look up the Facebook group then.
And if also now I'm building archtalk101.com.
Okay.
And right now, the only thing I really have up and running is if you go out to the menu, it says podcasts. You can watch the podcast there as well. The
Okay.
video, it posts from YouTube because I
Okay.
post it on YouTube as well as Audible. Um, Audible.com, you can listen to it on there, which is actually kind of a good way to do it because it just automatically picks up the next episode when they come out. Or you can get them on Spotify or wherever you listen to your normal podcasts. That's just the audio part. But the
Okay.
video is in my YouTube channel on the archtalk101.com,
Okay.
as well as in the Archtalk101 Facebook group. And the live versions are out there for, I don't know, what, a month or something, then they delete them
Okay.
off of my Facebook group or Facebook profile.
Okay.
Um, But if you haven't seen them in a month, you just got to go to the group.
Yeah. All right.
So what would you recommend to so like a new archer that was kind of in a position you were in that you were a rifle hunter, you didn't think archery would be for you, getting into it, what advice would you give to somebody that's kind of in that position where they don't really know much about archery?
Well, I would say this because this I found out the hard way. Um, I mean, if you want to buy your bow, your first bow from one of the big box stores, all for it, fine. Because a lot of times they don't carry from what I've seen, a lot of the bow shops don't carry the lower end, ready to hunt little packages like that. But what I would do if you buy one of those ready to hunt packages from the big box store, um, go to a reputable bow shop in your area, um, and let them walk you through fitting that bow or getting you fitted to that bow. My first bow I bought from the big box store, and his late at night, he was getting ready to call it a night and go home, and picked out the bow. And I told him, I've never shot a bow. I don't know anything about this. He picked out the bow. I want this Stinger X hunting package thing. He's like, all right, here, draw it back. He never measured me. He didn't measure my draw length. And so I drew it back, and it was, he looked at it. He's like, yep, that looks good. Shoot a couple arrows. And that bow was set at 29 and a half. My actual draw length is 30 and 3/4.
Just the
So
opposite of me. I was 32 and I actually 29 and a half.
and I just found out that it was actually 30 and 3/4 because I measured myself, and then I had somebody else measure me, and were like, yeah, we're getting 30 inches. You're a good 30 inches. Well, either way, he was still off in half an inch, and it made a difference. But here recently, I got to tinkering around and playing with the different draw lengths. And even at 30, and at one point, I was at 30 and a quarter, and I was shooting an elite result 36, and I felt cramped. It felt like my arms and everything was just cramped together. And I was like, this is just not comfortable. And I got to tinkering around, and I don't know, I don't even know how I did it. But with that result 36, somehow I managed to get 30 and 3/4 inch draw length. And I didn't realize I had gotten it that far. But I would draw back and settle in, and everything just settled. Everything just felt perfect. And so this was the start of this year's 3D season. It was in January, and I got that settled in, and I'm like, this is just great. And my scores were, before the target panic hit, my scores were just climbing. They were going up 209. I'm 912s, and for a third year shooting 3D competition and shooting 50-yard, known class, that was just wow. Um, I was amazed at how more comfortable I was shooting my bow when it was set to that draw length. And so when I got my newer bow, I got an elite verdict, and I went immediately just set it at 30 and 3/4, and everything just, when I go to full draw, everything just settles in perfectly. Everything, the peep, everything just so if I would say to anybody just getting in, I don't care if it's bow hunting or what. Yeah, if you want to buy it from the big box store, do it, but just still take it and go to a reputable uh, bow shop and let them walk you through it. Let them walk you through setting it up, getting everything, measure your draw length, getting the draw length from the bow. And even if you do the measurements and it says, oh, this is your draw length, well, how about we draw the bow back at that length and let's see how it feels. And then draw the bow back at, let's say, 30 and all right, so you're 30 inches. So let's try 30 and a quarter, see how that feels. Or let's try 29 and 3/4. Let's see which one is it? And not try to put everybody into this little cookie cutter system that, okay, it's got to be 30. We're saying 30 inches, so it's got to be 30. That's what's going to feel best for you. No, how about we try and see what actually feels good? Because if it doesn't feel good, you're not going to perform well.
Right. And I don't remember the exact formula now, but we had a chart that basically just stand up on the wall, hold your fingers out, and that
Mm,
gives you your draw length. There's a certain number that you start with, and then for every inch of wingspan, it's a half inch longer draw length. But
hmm
the easiest way to calculate is take your wingspan from tip to tip and measure it, divide it by 2.5.
Yep.
That'll get you a starting point. Now,
Exactly.
when I was
Exactly.
doing that, when we had those boards up there, I was doing them, nobody was ever shorter than that. They
Mm,
were that length or longer.
yeah.
And that's a starting point, you know. So if you measure your wingspan, you probably don't know what that is, but
Yeah.
if you measure wingspan divided by 2.5, that's going to give you a starting point. And I imagine what yours is going to say is probably going to be 30 or 30 and a half, something
Yeah.
like that, because that's the way it calculates out. At which in case I wouldn't even put you in a 29 and a half. I'd get a 30. Now, a lot of bows don't come in those longer draw lengths.
No, they don't.
And so now what do? You have to get one of each. The shorter axle is normally shorter draw lengths because you
Yep.
can't draw them that long. There's just not enough you can do. So you have to have a little bit longer axle to axle. You know, you may have to get a 34 or a 36, you know, or even a 38. Now then you're getting into the older style bows. But that's what you're going to do. And like you said, you know, you can settle in. You know, if it's too short, you can't get that. There's no way to get the elbow back unless the elbow's really bent.
Yep.
You know, it's like,
Exactly.
okay, get that elbow where it's pointing straight back. And if you're way up like this, it's like you need a longer draw length. You need to be stretched out because if not, you can't relax those shoulders down. You draw back, relax those shoulders down. Like you said, settle in because it's too short. You couldn't settle into your form. So
Exactly.
that's, you know, that's a good point to bring up for new shooters. And even those have been shooting for a while.
Yeah.
You know, if you're struggling with something, let's take a look. And like I said, you know, if you're struggling with something, take a video, upload a video from your phone to the um, Facebook group, Arch
Okay.
Talk 101 Facebook group, and we'll take a look at it. You know, a lot of us can see that kind of stuff. And nice one now is I can download the video. I can put it in my video editor I use for my YouTube channel because I can frame in advance, one frame at a time. So I can see all the little things in here that I couldn't see when I first started because when I first started, we're recording on a VCR tape or watching it live. I did most of my coaching live. Didn't have the access of having a recording I could go back and play frame advance at a time and see our slow motion and see what's going on. And you know, so as we're doing this, you know, upload them. I like to take a look at the videos and help people out, and you know, you can see stuff. You know, if you're a traditional shooter and one time your hand comes back, one times it comes out, one times it comes down, one times it comes
Mhm.
up. You know, you'll never group,
Yeah.
you know, so that's stuff that we can look for. So
It
yeah,
will definitely.
that's a definitely something to think about when you're starting out. I know when I worked at Bass Pro and Cabela's both, we had archers there that knew what was going on. We could help you with all kinds of stuff, you know,
Yeah.
because we all of us worked at a shop somewhere else when I was at Bass Pro. There's four of us, and between the four of us, we probably had 60 plus years of experience, you know, working in shops.
Okay.
And you know, I had my own for a few years, and you know, you know, when I was at Cabela's, well, no one knew anything about archery when I got there, including the lead. But then another guy come in that was with me over at Bass Pro, and we knew what was going on, and you know,
Yeah.
we're teaching people how to shoot, and my thought is I'm going to sell you a bow, but I'm going to teach you how to shoot. With the
Yeah.
bow, you get shooting instruction. You know, and that's why you buy it from me because I'll give you shooting instruction along with it. You know, when I had my store, that's one of the advantages I had. Plus, that all set up. I had my Nova kits come with 6 arrows with tips, fletch with whatever fletchings you wanted. You know, vanes were one price if you wanted feathers. There's, you know, a little bit more if you wanted to go with feathers. And it come with a release and string silencers and a rest and sight and quiver and you know the whole setup. And you know, mainly because you couldn't price compare. Because everybody sold the Nova. You can go to Walmart at that time and get the Nova, but you couldn't get them set up. And I even
Yeah.
had one guy's like, I think I can set it. Well, you could bolt them on, but if you want to set up right, I'm going to charge you another $40 to set up your bow. Like, and then I'm going to charge you $100 an hour for shooting instruction. It's like, oh, well, I'll take it back. I'll take it for you. I'll get it for you. So he come and bought it for me because he saved himself probably $140
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
and paid basically less than what it had paid by buying there because that was just the bow, no arrows,
Oh
no
yeah.
tips, yeah, no release.
Uh,
Yeah, so yeah, that was kind of why I did it that way.
that's a good
No
plan.
price compare. And that's why I didn't carry any release that Walmart carried.
I don't blame you for that.
But Scott releases are great.
Yeah,
Carter's Stanislavski's are good. Um, True Ball, they make some really good releases. Um, there's some other ones that make some pretty nice ones. Um, True Fire is another one that I carried some. When that rep called me, I told him if Walmart carries it, I won't. I don't want it.
yeah,
Because I already had one of those that I got from PSE that is really cheap ones. I
yeah,
don't recommend them, but it gives you something to start with, and then you can replace it later. Because after all, the whole control of that string is that release,
yeah,
and one that moves has a long trigger travel. Is it's gonna You're gonna feel it before it goes off.
yeah,
And even like this one here, to open them jaws up, I got to move. Oh, get it on camera. To open them jaws up, I have to move that trigger quite a ways to get it to open up. And all that movement is distraction.
yeah. It is definitely
I can shoot this when they actually sent it to me to try out, and yeah, that's okay because it was half the cost of my Carter. But it's okay, but it's too much movement. I feel
yeah,
that movement, and then I start thinking about the movement.
exactly. And that's when you end up. That's when mistakes start happening.
That's when you start getting target panic.
Exactly, exactly.
Anytime you feel the movement in that trigger release, you're going to think about it.
Yep. And then you're gonna start trying to force it. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's been great talking with you,
you too.
and it's uh, it's been a while. We talked for a while here now. It's what has it been? Probably almost a couple hours now.
Oh yeah.
So I got we're gonna record. Today's gonna be busy doing. I got 4 podcasts scheduled for today.
Okay. Oh yeah, you are busy.
Every 2 hours I've got one. So, but they're fun to do. I enjoy doing them,
Oh, I
and
appreciate it. I really do. I was kind of surprised when I saw the invite. I was like, okay, why me? But okay. Uh,
well,
I'll
you're
do
an archer. You had some good stories.
it. Well, I
Yeah,
appreciate it. I really do.
yeah. I'm always looking for guests on the podcast. The only requirement is we start talking archery. After that, he goes wherever we want to go.
Okay.
So we'll talk to you later, and make sure you upload a video to the group, and we'll
I
see
sure
how
will.
you're going, and if we need to have a little more one-on-one, we'll just do another podcast just teaching you,
Okay.
going through that. We could do that too.
Okay.
I think
Sounds
that'd be
good.
good help for archers that are struggling with target panic or something, things that we're
Okay.
going through, and I give you some ideas, so we'll try those out and see how that works.
Okay. Sure will.
Yeah, my name is Roy Canterbury. I've been your host today on Arch Talk 101. With Scott Owens is our special guest today, and we'll see you on the next one.